In this episode, I get to talk to a former colleague. Her name is KiKi L'Italien. Don't get me started on the name. It's one of the coolest I've ever heard. We talk about big career shifts. Now, KiKi is mid-career, like me. And the last 10 years of her career, she's spent as a proud solopreneur. She was in the grind, not intimidated by the hustle, and she made her business work. And then her situation changed. And she was faced with a very necessary choice: to stay in her business or to go back to being a full-time employee of a larger company. And she talks about the emotions that she experienced, the anger and the resentment and the fear that she had. But through all of that, she managed to do something really incredible. She didn't let those emotions eat her up. She still made conscious choices. She stayed vulnerable. She asked for help, and she kept herself looking for possibility instead of letting those emotions take over. And I thought this was a truly model story for what it looks like to be self-aware, to be simultaneously in these big feelings, but keeping your eyes and your heart open to make the best choice possible in a situation that was not of your choosing. So here's our conversation. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of When Does It Get Good? I'm so excited to be here today. Oh, by the way, I'm jumping in because I'm super excited. But before I forget, I'm Zovig Garboushian. I'm your host. I'm the founder of Boldness Ablaze Coaching. And now that I got that out of the way, now I want to tell you what we're doing today. Today, we're talking to a former colleague of mine. Her name is KiKi L'Italien. She and I go back probably almost 10 years at this point. KiKi is the VP of marketing for Big Red M, and she's the editor-in-chief of Association Chat. But where KiKi and I met was when I worked for a small company called Media Bistro. I oversaw all of our learning and development products, and KiKi was one of the instructors for our social media courses, our online social media, right? Is that right?
That's it. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
she was teaching people the basic skills of how to use and market through Facebook and Instagram. And it was incredible. So I've had the wonderful opportunity of being able to stay in touch with you. And we recently reconnected, and you talked to me about a really big career shift that you recently made. And as you were telling me this story, KiKi, I thought other people need to hear this because, one, it's a fantastic story of a huge transition, one that was done in a thoughtful and very present way, but also it showed how you showed up for yourself through that experience, how you reflected, how you considered your options, how you sort of observed yourself and the experience as you were going through it, which takes an amazing amount of self-awareness and presence. So all of that to say, welcome. I'm so glad you're here, KiKi.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. I'm so excited that you're doing this podcast, Zovig. So I think this is going to be a really great discussion, but I'm really excited that you're going to be doing this and having great discussions and sharing with everyone, because I can learn from you every time I talk to you. So this is awesome. Yeah.
Thank you. So I gave a little bit about what you do, but I'd love just for you to share, what is Big Red M? What is Association Chat? Just tell us a little bit about who you are in these different environments.
So my life kind of is circulating and revolving around associations and nonprofits. And a lot of people don't necessarily, unless they're in the world, they don't really think about associations and nonprofits a lot. Nonprofit, yes, maybe. Associations, not so much. There's pretty much an association for everything. So if you think about the National Association of Home Builders or the National Association of Realtors, these are all like trade and professional societies that exist. And that's really my focus. And it has been for most of my career. And so Big Red M serves that market. Big Red M sells for associations, also provides consulting services for associations. And then Association Chat is like my baby. Is only actually 1 year younger than my actual baby, who is now 16 years old and driving a car, right? But Big Red M Association Chat, it started as the most pornographic sounding hashtag tweet chat in the world, ass and chat. Let's talk about that, okay? Ass and chat. But it's stayed Listen, there used to be a limit, 140 character limit. It was a different day. But anyway, that grew into being an interview series, a community, a Facebook group, a blog, all of this other stuff, and a podcast now. And so that's been growing and growing over the years. And so it's really kind of evolved into its own thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to dive right in. I hope that that's okay.
Let's do it.
So you were in business for yourself for over 10 years, right?
Oh yeah. Over a decade.
Yeah. And so then you're seasoned, you've had a whole career, and for 10 years you were in it for yourself. And then recently you made the switch. You've made the switch to go back to working for a larger organization, which is Big Red M. So I want to hear a little bit about what prompted that and what the experience was like for you when you were facing making that change.
Yeah. So, I think that over the years, I've been pretty proud of myself for the work that I've done to develop my own brand and to build my business. And I identified very closely with being this self-starter, self-driven individual. I still do, right? These are parts of myself that I just can't change. I like to create things. I like autonomy. I have a lot of great ideas and I like to build on them. What ended up happening was along the way, I started doing some work on myself, where I was dealing with some stuff with, some past trauma. And I think for me, I'm 47 years old. And when you get to a certain point, hopefully if you're living life right, you become self-aware enough that you're like, well, let me like get a little self-introspective here and begin to explore some of this stuff because, there might be some things I need to sort out. And as I was going through that work and getting stronger and stronger, I began to become more comfortable with questioning the things that my beliefs really, and things that maybe I had thought were just these hard and fast rules that I had assigned to my life. A hard and fast rule is like, my brand is I wear red lipstick. I don't, and all of this stuff. I am the kind of person that must work for myself. You hear all the time from other entrepreneurs, like, I'm basically unhireable. Like I could only work for myself. And we're proud of ourselves when we say this sort of thing, right? We're like, I could only work for myself.
Yeah.
But and I said these things too. But what happened was a couple of things. One was I was exploring a lot of some content that had to do with like abundance and how to invite the type of life that you want to live into your life. There are certain things that I've exchanged for, being a self-driven entrepreneur. I, by the way, as an entrepreneur, like I wanted to be a solopreneur because I didn't want to have, some contracted help is fine. I didn't want to have employees. So that was one of the things that, I had made a decision about, but I traded security in for that. And it doesn't have to be that way, but it was for me. And I traded in a lot of things like traveling for fun. And I thought I'll just build off the kind of travel that I want to do off of being paid for speaking or being invited to these different places. I'll build in a few extra days. And over time, I thought that was fine until I would get frustrated, right? I'd get frustrated periodically. And then everything hit a boiling point when in the period of 1 week last year, my husband, who always had the steady job, was always the one that when I had my highs and lows and it was like feast or famine and we hit the famine part, it was like, okay, well, it'll be okay because he has the health insurance and that kind of stuff. He found out that he was going to be laid off. And so he's telling me this through a closed door, while he's barricaded because he has COVID, and
Mhm.
telling me, oh, guess what? I just found out I'm going to be laid off. And I'm thinking, okay, and now I've got to do my dance and hustle and make sure that I'm going to have us covered. Same week, 2 days later, I find out that my basically Q4 that was going to cover that whole quarter of
Mhm.
work for me, that revenue disappeared because
Mm.
I heard from my client that she needed to pause, which those of us in consulting know that could mean I could pause for a week, a month,
Yeah.
a year, forever. We don't
Mhm.
know. It could be the
Mhm.
forever pause. We just don't know. Worst time ever to do it. And exactly when I need to come up with more, I'm being, something's being taken away.
Mhm.
And I got so angry.
Oh,
Zovig. I got
yeah.
like, I was resentful, and I I was feeling very bitter,
Mhm.
and I felt all of these emotions arise that had to do, it was as if I was angry at a person. And it's
Mhm.
actually reminded me of a lot of the work I was doing to get through my resentment towards certain individuals in my
Mhm.
family.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow, this is really wild. This is how I feel about my career, is very similar to how I felt about certain members of my family. And it occurred to me that, for so long, people were congratulating me on sort of somehow moving past all of this and not replicating what I grew up with in my marriage.
Mhm.
And then I just discovered, like, I had replicated it in my career. I didn't
Mhm.
replicate it in my marriage. I replicated it in my relationship with my work. And that was just mind blowing to me, because I was like, I'm resentful because I'm giving more than I'm getting. I'm
Mhm.
resentful because I'm never being taken care of the way I need to be taken care of. And that was huge.
Mhm.
It was the thing that was just like my brain kind of like, oh my gosh. And so then I thought, so that's a reality.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Because all I've ever thought of is like, here I am. I'm an entrepreneur. I work for myself. This is what I do.
Mhm.
And now I realize that I'm in an unhealthy relationship with my own work. And it's like, what do I do with that? And so that ended up leading to some very different conversations.
Mhm.
And I actually had to go to a big conference that was held in Las Vegas, largest conference for meeting professionals, destinations, and all of that in North America.
Mhm.
Going to that conference, I'm heading into it and I'm thinking, what's going to happen with our health insurance? What's going to happen with my husband's career? What's going to happen with my career?
Yeah.
And as I go into this conference, I could have pretended. I could have been like, hey, great seeing you. Yeah, life is awesome.
Yep.
It's so great.
Yep.
Live in the dream, you know? I mean, all the stuff
It's a
that we
choice.
say.
It's a choice. You
I
can do
could
that.
have said that. And but I didn't. And I started having conversations like, you know, I think that something's got to change. I
Mhm.
think that something's got to change. And the conversations that I had there and the conversations I had when I came back led directly to, a really happy place that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
But I never would have gotten there if I hadn't first done some work going into it, and then sort of reckoned with these ideas of who I am
Mhm.
and what it means to, change your relationship with the work that
Mhm.
you do. So there's a lot
Wow.
there.
There is a lot there, and it was all you said so many things, but a couple of the one thing I understand in you telling me the story again, and then the first time I heard this story, is the level of noticing and observation that you had for yourself. So oftentimes when we are trying to make a change or we're facing something difficult, what happens is we become the experience. We become, you said, anger and bitterness and resentment. We can become those things. But it sounds like what you did was you observed yourself experiencing those things. Like, I am experiencing anger. I'm experiencing resentment. I'm feeling bitter. And that observation, I think, can create a little bit of space between us and the experience, because we can actually become bitterness. We can become just straight up bitter. We can become angry and just be that angry person. But there's a difference between being it and experiencing it. Experiencing it means it's a transient experience. And it sounds like you really gave yourself the opportunity to experience it, not become it. And that to me is a lot of self-compassion, KiKi.
Thank you. Thank
That's a
you.
Yeah, that's a great deal of self-compassion. And that's, by the way, everybody, that is work. That is like attention and intention and a willingness to look at what's not working about the choices I've made, about, everything here internally. And that is the hard work of having a relationship with yourself. And so the other thing that really stood out was the relationship that you had with your work and
Mm-hmm.
the identity of who you were as a solopreneur and how you related to yourself being a solopreneur. And that the word identity really comes up for me. Like, we have these identities. I am a this, I am a that, I am a mom, I am a solopreneur,
Yeah.
I am a VP of marketing, I'm a, hockey player, whatever. And then we see ourselves in that way, and then sometimes don't give ourselves any room to play or be other things. So that when we get hit with a moment where we have to make a choice and show up as something else, it can be really hard because we
Oh,
shift how
yeah.
we see ourselves.
Well, and I think it's so easy for that to be the case because it's like, maybe Americans have this in particular because we're supposed to, like, this work ethic, this
Mm-hmm.
drive, this, like, grind, get up and grind, the hustle
Yeah, the
culture that we hear
grind.
about. It's like this is supposed to be something that's admirable. And then certainly in like the household that I grew up in, everybody worked hard. And that was the way that no matter what else was going on, there could have been so much dysfunction in so many different areas, but by God, we worked hard. And so this idea that, you're out there, you're driving, you're working so hard, that's supposed to be the thing that redeems you somehow. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's maybe what I was thinking about
Mm-hmm.
myself. And why I felt so betrayed by the years and years that I put in, putting this creation like association chat out and then looking at the industry and looking around me and saying, but I don't have enough. Why is that? Why have I built this brand and this name and yet it's not enough? What am I missing? Where have I gone wrong? And when I started to get angry at other people and individuals and all of this stuff, and it was all connected to this industry that wasn't supporting me, it wasn't the industry, it was the setup. It was that this particular situation, it was duplicating what I had seen growing up. I was putting all of this energy out and I wasn't getting it back. And that it was not this loving transaction or even a healthy transaction. It
Mm-hmm.
was, I'm just going to give and give and give so you can tell me how good I am, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And the interesting thing about that is that, the identity that I tied to some of these things that are supposed to mean entrepreneur, I thought that it was this freedom, that it was the creative, the individuality, the leadership. I identified with all of these things. I still do. And what I noticed is that once I made the change to going and working for someone else, which by the way is an amazing story in and of
Mm-hmm.
itself, because essentially I ended up in a conversation where I said, well, here's where I am. I think I'm actually looking for a full-time thing, working for an organization with one focus. And by the way, I still want to grow association chat. And they said, yeah, wave a magic wand and tell us what kind of job you'd like.
Yeah.
And I told them exactly the kind of job I wanted, and then they created it for me. And it was like the dream, right? But it's because I was just being honest and knew what I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
but I knew that what I was doing at the time wasn't working. And so some of the struggle that I've had since then is in friends who are really well-meaning, but they're like, well, now that you're not an entrepreneur anymore,
Ah.
which cue inside me, you can imagine what that is. It's
Knife in the
like,
heart.
why are you up on a Saturday working on your website? You're not an entrepreneur anymore. You don't have
Oh
to do
boy.
that. And I'm just
Mm.
like, I wasn't doing that because I had to. I was doing that because I wanted to,
Yeah.
and the way that I work, that I choose to work isn't the label doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's really just a matter of where am I applying whatever, skills I have and whatever talents I have, where am I applying that? You can
Yeah.
call that I'm working for myself. I can be doing that working for you. But if I have the freedom and the autonomy to make good decisions, I don't see any difference about whether I'm getting a paycheck regularly every 2 weeks or whether I'm earning that from working for a client that's paying
Mhm.
me once a month or project-based fees or however you get paid. So
Mhm.
there's a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's different.
Yeah. I'm curious, what was how would you describe how you see yourself now? Like, how has that identity? I know you still see yourself as a creator, which you are.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that these things are part of our core essence. We are certain ways naturally without any effort. And I know creator is one of your ways of being. And whether that looks like being an entrepreneur or creation of a business or whatever it is, you're a creator, right? So is there any difference in how you're identifying with yourself now versus prior to this experience? Like what's shifted?
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, I think I was afraid of admitting how much I craved stability.
Oh, okay.
I think I was afraid of admitting, um, that I was scared,
Mm,
some of the time. And that's okay. I mean, it was always okay. But I would hold back from sharing some of that nervous energy that you have when you're struggling. This is probably the thing that I would have, looking back, there was probably a sign that something was off when I couldn't share how nervous I was about these different things with people that I was the closest with.
mhm,
I would hold on to that because I didn't want to make anybody else worry. I didn't want to
mm,
make anyone else scared. And I also wanted to show that I had control over what was happening around me. Like I'm good. I'm fine. I can do whatever I need to do. I can make it happen, right? And so I think that I'm just a lot more honest with myself right now, and in recognizing that I'm like, I don't I don't need to prove
mm,
that I can hustle. I think I've proven it over a decade of hustling, right? I don't need to prove anything. I can just go and create the situation I want. And for me, that's the situation I wanted. I wanted to be in a place where, where I could say, okay, yeah, no, I'm good. I've got the kind of job that I want. I've got the kind of setup that I want right now. Maybe that changes in the future. By the way, I like the idea that, you create kind of the setup that you want. I feel
mhm,
like the labels connected to entrepreneur, solopreneur, or, employee, like I feel like we should just become a little bit more, I don't know, flexible with that, because
yeah,
we can switch in and out. We can change as we need to.
mhm,
Basically, it's what works for us, right? And as
mhm,
long as we don't get too tied to with our identity to what one of those labels mean, you can be entrepreneurial. You can definitely create things while you're working for somebody else. Um, in my situation, I've got them supporting my supporting association chat, and that
Mhm.
being properly resourced and funded for the
Mhm.
first time ever, which is gorgeous. That's such a
Yeah.
gorgeous situation, but it's like, create it, go and make it happen, and um, and let it be easy. And since then, it's like I kept wondering why I was doing all of this work and good things would happen, but I would hit these just roadblock, barrier. Why?
Mhm.
Why was
Mhm.
that happening? Um, and all this goodwill flowing my way, but it was barriers in my finances, really, where these things would shift and go up and down. And then as soon as I began to explore what it meant to like maybe open up and look at other options, here I am. I'm going to Greece, and it's like this was not something that I was planning on. It was like, oh, well, this is a great opportunity, and now we can go to Greece for a week. And
Mhm.
it's like, this is the kind of life I wanted to have all these
Mhm.
years with the
Mhm.
flexibility I wanted, and I thought I could only have in one way.
Yeah. Oh, I like
So,
that.
yeah.
So you said a couple things. This is the kind of life I thought I wanted to have, and I could only have it in one way. And then a thing you said a moment ago was that was the labels of things. Um, I think they keep us in the one way. They
Yeah.
perpetuate the one way of thinking, right? So like I had my own one way. So for many years I was marketer. First 15 years of my career I was marketer. When I was trying desperately to shift out of an industry and a job uh, type that did not it was not congruent with who I was. I didn't know how to look for the next role because I didn't know myself as anything other than a marketer.
Hmm.
I had to go do some work. I worked, thank goodness I had a good friend who was a career coach. She had just started out. We exchanged. She gave me coaching. I gave her copywriting for her website. It was perfect. And I discovered some core values that helped me see, oh, I'm not just one way. This was a label. It helped me organize myself. By the way, these labels, these, things, they help us organize the world. They help us organize who we know, how we know them. They help us put things into certain places. But then, like you said, we get stuck.
Hmm.
We get attached to the way we think things should go because it's how it's always gone. And it's, even the things that don't work often are things we get used to and accustomed to. So they become familiar. So then we get stuck in that sort of rut. But being able to be willing to go, who else can I be? What else is possible for me? What would I have to let go of or open up to in order for me to see how else my life could work? Particularly when you have a desire for stability. I think, which is what you said, like that. I think that's what I wrote down was stability. It was really important to you. And I don't
Hmm.
think you're alone in that, KiKi. I don't think you're alone in wanting some stability, financial stability, emotional stability. I think that's many, if not all of us. Some of us have a higher tolerance to the ups and downs, right? But I
Yeah.
think for the most part, we like to know how things are going to go, especially for smart people who are used to being able to get stuff done. And they know that when they take action, they usually get the result they want.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
being thrown like that is a little destabilizing. Like if I change, my world might not look as familiar and stable to me. Turns out your world sounds like it's more stable now than it was before. It's just you had gotten used to this one way.
Yeah. And when I look back at it, I think I had a very unstable upbringing. Just like, I mean, in every way that you can possibly imagine. And I think that what felt normal was having this sort of fear and this like
Mm.
all of this anxiety around where things coming from and things shifting, and you have to be ready to adapt. And I told myself this story, which partially is true, but I told myself this story that the gifts you get from that are that you can adapt really fast and that you can grow and become stronger. The part the part that I probably should have also, maybe learned along the way, and thankfully I think that I'm starting to understand and let in a little bit, is that yes, and you know
Mhm.
it can make you stronger, it can make you more adaptable, but you don't always have to do that. You don't
Yeah.
always have to exercise that. That doesn't mean that that has to be your normal, right?
Yeah.
And I think when I realized it wasn't like, I don't have to be scrappy and tough.
Mm.
I can actually be properly resourced and receive the things that I have earned and that I should receive, like I should be able to receive as well as give. And there's so much with that it's just, I can't even tell you, Zove, like how much is happening since then. Like once I made this change, I really don't think it has to do with like the structure of, am I on a staff or am I an entrepreneur? I think it had everything to do with my relationship with my work
Mm-hmm.
and giving and receiving this
Mm-hmm.
idea of, and I've been working on this, right?
Yeah.
I just didn't expect it to show up in this way. And now, tomorrow, like tonight, after we do this, I'm going to be traveling to DC tomorrow. I'm receiving an award.
Wow.
Look,
Congratulations.
I'm
For what?
receiving an award because of spreading technology in the association world, constantly teaching people. I do this like through association. So I'm going on stage, but get this,
Mm.
I'm
Yes.
receiving recognition. I'm like,
Yeah.
the pieces are coming into place, I think finally, because I'm allowing them to,
You're allowing them
yeah, I'm not just holding fast to like
to.
this, it must be this way. And I'm going to
Yeah.
drive and create the success of my one way of thinking about my career.
Yeah.
I'm just opening myself up to the things that make sense and that feel good. And it's working out. Go figure.
So I had this visual of like sort of just a seam like sort of coming unraveled and just neatly coming out of the stitching and just sort of something just opening up. And I'm curious, because you said you've been working on this, like you had
Mm-hmm.
been doing work prior to this experience of shifting um, happening. I'm curious, what do you do? How do you self-reflect? How do you take care of yourself and attend to yourself so that you can be open? Because I ask about the how because I don't think anybody would disagree with what you're saying that we should be open to what else there is, what other possibilities, seeing ourselves in new ways. But the how and the what that actually looks and feels like is different. So I'm curious, what is it? How do you support yourself to be able to do that?
Can so this is where I know that we're not cursing, but can I get a little woo? Can I get a little
Yeah.
bit woo?
Yeah, you can get woo.
Okay. Okay. So I started learning a little bit more about feminine and masculine and the sort of way of thinking linearly versus like in a masculine way versus thinking in a more divine feminine kind of way, right?
Okay.
So I
Mm-hmm.
started looking into that and exploring what that meant. And what that meant for me is that every time I find myself, I tend to, I like lists, I like structure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's only one way of looking at things. And whenever I find myself sort of forcefully trying to make something fit, then I've been working on catching that, observing that, finding
Mm-hmm.
that where that is. And then you would like this, because you talk about this, the getting curious about it
Yeah.
and asking why am I doing that? Why am I forcing that? Why is that so hard?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it's because it's not something that needs to be solved in a linear way. A lot of times when I find myself in those situations, I'm trying to force something because maybe that's not the way it's supposed to go,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe, there's something else there. There's another way that I'm not seeing that doesn't necessarily make sense in that sort of linear fashion. And when I open myself up to other possibilities, it's amazing because they begin to appear,
Mm-hmm.
right? and I don't, I think people can say like, it's like magic or manifesting or whatever. I don't
Mhm.
know, like what I know for sure is that when you're looking for a certain thing, a lot of times you overlook so many others, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is that when I ease up and don't focus so much on looking for the one thing, a lot of times many other things appear.
Mhm.
And sometimes that can hold the answer. So
Mhm.
it's been that. It's been,
Yeah.
when something's so hard, maybe that's not the way. Maybe I need to open up and look at things differently. And surprisingly, for me, and thankfully, what that means is that, I have opened myself up to conversations, people I never would have talked to in the way that I have. Like,
Mhm.
it's created a whole new direction in my life.
Mhm. What I'm hearing through all of this are several sort of themes of just how you're being.
Mhm.
One is very vulnerable and willing to, like you said, when you went to that conference, you said, I could have been fake. And I just got back from a conference a week and a half ago, and there was a lot of that, right? And I had to
Oh,
kind of put
yeah.
my shields up to manage my own energy around that stuff. So that can happen in those environments. But you decided, I'm not going to BS this. I'm just going to say what's happening.
Hmm.
And that's because that's just what's happening. And it sounds like that was a really great the vulnerability that you showed really served you well and provided some value and opened some doors. I hear a lot of curiosity, but part of this too is the courage. And with courage, I think comes it's fueled by self-trust.
Hmm.
So I have a hunch that there is a foundation of self-trust in yourself, KiKi, that you trust, you trusted. You might have not known where you were jumping into, but you like, the metaphor of jumping into an empty pool and hoping that the water shows up. I don't know. I don't know if I just made that up, but I feel like I've heard that somewhere. But like you trusted yourself. There's whether I don't know if you were aware of that or not, but like it really sounds like a lot of self-trust to me. And I know that when we can trust ourselves, we can do what I call take it or leave it.
Hmm.
You can
Hmm.
take something or leave something. If this isn't for me, even if I really, really wanted it, I can walk away and know that I will be okay. I can make this new choice and know that even if it doesn't work out ideally, I'm still going to be okay. Like the self-trust is the thing that I think is underneath all of this stuff, at least from through my ears. What I'm hearing from you is that there's some level of self-trust that you have that allowed you to be vulnerable and say, okay, I need to look at this differently. I need to show up for this differently. Who
Yeah.
am I? I need to look at myself differently. Because that stuff can feel very scary.
Oh, and and the vulnerability part, it's so key. Like creating, so while you're doing this sort of thing, it is, yeah, there's vulnerability there, but you also have to recognize that in making yourself vulnerable, there are going to be like you could hear these things that kind of tear at you, kind of like
Mhm.
well-meaning people who say, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
you're not an entrepreneur anymore, so you need to do that." That I'm like constantly inside, like, did they really mean to dig at me, or are they trying to get under my skin? Like, who
Yeah.
says that? But then the other thing is there was somebody I remember who reached out and said, "Oh, KiKi, if you open yourself to going to work for you." The way that the market is right now, I mean, you're looking at making like $75,000 a year and you won't make
Mhm.
over that, and I could have listened to that and I could have been like, you're right, but I didn't. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to listen to that. Not that there's anything wrong with making that, but I was just saying in my mind, I was looking at where I was. And in essence, what she was saying is, you're not going to make as much as what
Yeah.
you've been doing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to listen to it because I was like, I think you're wrong. So how about that? I think you're
How about
wrong.
that?
How about that? And I was really happy. I mean, she was like checking back to prove how right she was, and it
Mm.
was it was kind of
Wow.
pleasant to be able to tell her, nope, you were wrong. I was like,
Interesting.
oh, what are you making? Oh, this. And guess what else,
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, maybe that's not a healthy sort of story to share, but there is that where it's like, there are going to be people occasionally that are out there, and because maybe they're scared,
Yeah.
they say little things because, and that was another thing, because other people were entrepreneurial and they were afraid of maybe, what it meant that they had to keep this fight on. It was almost as if I was giving up on some sort of fight. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't feel like I'm trading in my entrepreneur card for, like, just because I'm going to get a regular paycheck working for somebody else after
Yeah.
a decade of like proving myself and doing this. I kind of feel like, if I've created this job for myself, say I find myself working for myself again, could totally happen in like 5 years. I just don't even know. Um, does that mean I stopped being the same person who was entrepreneurial? I don't think
Right.
so. Um,
Right.
so, I think that those labels can be really damaging because we have to focus on our skills, our talents, our engagement with the way that we work and with the people around us and what makes sense to us, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it becomes a little damaging when we make things so narrow that there can only be one way. There's plenty of room for nuance, plenty of room for different types of solutions for ourselves. So,
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. I think this is a good place for us to pause. This is by no means the end, because I know we could talk about this for a very long time, but I want to pause here, and I just want to ask you, is there anything that you, just through your experience, that you might recommend to somebody who's looking, either active, like consciously looking to make a change, or who may come up against the unexpected um, mountains that you had to climb over that prompted this change? Is there anything that you might offer them um, to help them support themselves?
I think um, I think the closer that you can get to answering what's really bothering you is probably the most valuable thing that you can do. So if you find yourself being mad at a situation versus a person, exactly, you
Hmm.
know, asking yourself why, and if it's a theme that keeps coming up. Those themes that keep coming up, if it's a
Yeah.
situation you find yourself in over and over again. Um, I kept hearing people tell me, when are you going to finally be recognized the way that you should be?
Hmm.
People would tell me this. They'd say,
Hmm.
you should be doing so much more than and the killer was at a conference this past year, not the one I was telling you about, a different one. Somebody told a friend of mine, when's she finally going to get paid what she's worth? And that person told me that. And it was like a gut punch because I thought it's two things, right? It's one, um, I'm not getting paid what I'm worth, right? It's two, that somebody else can see that from the outside and is
Yeah.
somehow observing that about me. How would they know?
Yeah.
Are they looking at my bank account? They don't know. They have no
Yeah.
idea. And this was a theme, though. It was playing into a fear, whether that person could see it or not. It touched on something that was true, and it was a thing that came over and over again. So my suggestion would be, if you see these themes in your life where there's this one sort of message that's coming to you pretty clearly over and over again, explore why. Like, what
Hmm.
is it about that that's really
Yeah.
bothering you? Um, and don't don't let go of exploring that, because it might not just be locked in some sort of thing with your past or your history. It might be in the way that you engage with your career now. It might
Hmm.
be in how you engage with your home life, your relationship to your health or fitness. Could be anything, but
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
curious.
Get curious. I love it. Thank you so much for that. So, KiKi, where can people find you if they want to know more of you?
Oh, well, associationchat.com, I love all kinds of stuff is there. If you look up KiKi L'Italien, you're going to find a lot about me on all the socials and stuff like that. But feel free to reach out, and definitely on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Reach out through LinkedIn. Happy to connect. And any friend of Zovig's is a friend of mine. So
Wonderful.
yeah,
Thank you so much for being here, KiKi, and sharing your story as openly and as candidly and as vulnerably as you have. I really appreciate it. And I hope that everyone who listens has found something that they can connect to and relate to, and maybe even be able to put into practice for themselves. So thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for now. I hope that you enjoyed this episode, and please join us in a couple weeks for another episode soon to come on more issues and topics around self-awareness and the relationship we have with ourselves. But until then, take good care of yourselves. Lots of love and big energy. Bye for now. Hey, it's Zovig. Listen, if you enjoyed this episode, why not spread the love? Go to the episode page in Spotify podcasts and hit the share icon to share it with a friend who would also like it. It costs you nothing to share the love, and it helps others find the show too. And I can tell you want that good karma.